Anything you want to talk about?
I have learned, I come to listen now, learn what I'm supposed to learn. And then when I hear that's something I'm supposed to learn. So then I have gratitude and I focus on that for a week or two.
A week or two, wow,
Yeah.
good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, because it takes time. I have to come back every semester. That's where I live from.
Yeah. Okay, well, there's that. Anyone else?
I always have something to do. I'll wait.
Sure, Grace, and then Rafael, and then Kendra, and then Alexis, and of course Anaz, and yeah.
So this is actually Cindy's question.
Oh,
I remember it. It's not.
okay.
It's the advanced age.
Not it. Sibley always wonders about how you can tell a true teacher from a predator.
You can't.
Great.
Ah. Can you say more about that? Yeah. Okay.
In many ways, I'm sorry.
Because they're the same. They have to be the same somehow.
When you, of course. You don't have children, Grace. Thank God for that. But what usually happens when you do have children is that kids are very organically, they are pushed to kind of gravitate towards things that give them a good amount of pleasure, whether it's ice cream or watching many episodes of Bluey. It matters very little. And when the parents jump in to say, well, it's time to do this and it's time to do that, it may be the wrong word to use, but perhaps in the eyes or imaginations of a child, he or she looks at the parents as predators. Because why? The parents are meddling into that which is pleasurable, and giving them responsibilities for things they don't really want to do. Dictator, predator, I think they're all the same. But I think the word predator, maybe the past maybe 30, 40, 50 years with the coming of Osho and the rest of those people from the East. First, I don't really know what makes a good teacher, and I don't know in what ways a student is attracted or why attracted to a teacher. And like all of us in this classroom, when you fall in love with someone or when you like something, in many ways you become blind to many of the flaws in the relationship and perhaps many of the wrongs that take place in the relationship. Good morning. And so while you're blinded, all you can see is just everything that's taking place is right. Time passes, your expectations are not met. Maybe you talk to other people, maybe you're triggered from an episode from the past. You compare and contrast, and then if there is the emotion of love between you and perhaps the teacher, once triggered, that particular emotion slowly becomes contaminated. And then definitions or perspectives that were absent now are very much in play. Yeah, but I don't think you can ever tell, who's the right teacher or a teacher who's not contaminated or who's a predator. It's something that just, I think over time, will just be revealed to you. It's a really, really, really good question and a very important one. But I wouldn't know how to answer it.
Was the idea that there could be two different things or they are different comes from the fear of suffering?
No, I don't know. I think you know the doctor who did my surgery. What was his name? Brian Kane. He was so calm. He spoke very, very softly, very gently, very slowly. And I said, "This guy's gonna like work on me." You know, he can hardly like talk. And yet that's exactly the sort of a person you need, you know, as a healer of the physical body. Let's say, so you have a teacher that just kind of like a physician works on your body. Then you go to a therapist shop that's supposed to be a teacher for your emotions. And it may be that they're really good, or it may be that you come to realize that you've spent $10,000 on someone who doesn't really know much. They just took your money and gave you nothing back. Maybe I come to class and I talk about a certain thinker like Wittgenstein, you know, or Camus, and you assume that intellectually I know a thing or two about these characters, and you come to my office and I take your time, I take your energy. Maybe you buy me pounds of coffee because you think I know a thing or two about Camus, and in the end you realize I'm just winging it. You know, you Google the stuff, you listen to some audios, and you realize that the audios are giving you information that I can never do in a million years. And then there is, of course, the spiritual part, if you kind of believe in those things. That you find yourself, I suppose, certain parts of you emotionally tantalized, you come to life and you kind of equate that with your spiritual aspect. And time passes, you realize you've given money, you've given your time, maybe you've given your body, a lot of different things, and in the end you have nothing in your pocket. But there is something to be said about just being counterfeit. And I go back to something that Rumi had said some years ago, which was, you only have counterfeit because there are things out there that are real. You know, you have gold plated because there is gold. You have a glass that looks like diamond because there is a thing called diamond. And I think all of us are looking for something real. It's just that most often we realize it's been a counterfeit. You know, when I went to school to do philosophy, I thought that, and I had just finished The Republic and the dialogues of Plato. I said, wow, this is what philosophy is. It's incredible. It's great. So when I signed up for my class, the guy he was a tree hugger, if you can call him that. This was like 35, 40 years ago. And the class was awful. He was awful. Everything about him was awful. He would never shower. His classes was much more boring than mine. And so I realized that this is not what I want. If this is philosophy, I'd rather just stay home and wash cars or something like that. So I really think it's, for the most part, a shot in the dark. When I first became interested in not so much academic philosophy, but this other kind of philosophy, I went to these gatherings. I was there for about 2 years. They had given me this special outfit to wear with an emblem and like a hat or a hood. I was to sit a certain way, breathe a certain way, do specific physical exercises with specific people. And on the side, they would also sell me books written by the teacher. The book was about 10 pages. I'm talking about like early 1980s. A 10-page booklet, $150. And you're talking about an organization well over 100,000 members, you know. And then you begin to open the booklet and you begin to read the poetry and you say, this does not make any sense. What the hell is he talking about? And every week you were supposed to buy a book. And you were supposed to write down your dreams and send it straight to the guy who was guiding the gatherings, and then he would take the dream and send it to the teacher. And then a couple years pass by and you look at your bank account, you have no money, it's in the negative. And you look at the books and you have no idea what the hell these books are talking about. And yeah, so there are lots of people out there who are looking for certain things to take from you, you know. But I think the saving grace, if there is such a thing, as long as you love, as long as you're very intense in your emotions in regards to the person, you're in what we call a worshiping state. We don't see any flaws. And in that way, you're very, very lucky. Whether you fall in love with someone who's in prison or walking around laney, what that particular emotion love will do for you is they will make you into a poet. It doesn't matter who the person is. Love has a tendency of just baptizing you in its own unique ways. You become a poet, you become an artist, you become profoundly patient, you become forgiving. Only when the emotion of love, the intensity dissipates a little and you kind of regain your eyesight, you begin to see things, that's when you begin to see the flaws. And in any ways, it's just a contamination imposed by just the human part of us, And in some ways, I think it's really, really good to ultimately begin to, I hope it never happens should you find a good teacher, but should it happen, it basically is a reminder that you've been anchoring your identity on someone else and you've been doing a good job for about 10 years. It's time to move on and figure something else, which is very, very difficult. When I read the book, Daughter of Fire, the problem with that book, which is almost 1,000 pages, it's a really, really good book, at least for me and my temperament and my history. It destroyed all the books that are out there afterwards. I couldn't find any book that compared to it. So I haven't read anything for about 20 years, which is really awful, So how can you tell you can't? And you don't have to make it very difficult. Just read the Gospel of Mark. Read any of the Gospels, 4 Gospels. None of them recognized who this guy is. The same is true with Gandhi. All the great heroes of humanity, because I'm down here and someone like Socrates is way up here. He is like 5 or 6 or 10 steps ahead of me. And the truth is, I can only pass judgments based on my own history, which is far lower than Socrates. And because I am filled with flaws, I'm going to impose those flaws onto Socrates. Unless, of course, Socrates has the power to make me or force me fall in love with him. Then I become very equal to him to some extent, emotionally at least. I can sit at his feet and just listen to him, just yap on endlessly. Good morning, Abi. How are you? I'm well, thank you. Thank you. Maybe the last thing I could say is, out of maybe 1,000 teachers, 1 is good. The rest are counterfeit. Just think of it as a dating game. If you're looking for something, like a therapist of sorts, examine 5 or 6 or 10 or 15 or 20 of them, and then follow your spidey senses. There is no other way. And pray that you don't fall victim. Yeah. Pride? You good? No. I'm sorry about those questions that they gave you. I got the email and I read through the questions and I said, who are these people? What is their problem? So disappointing. She's doing her exam to get her degree, and they've given her like 3 very, very long and convoluted and complex questions that she's supposed to write an essay on each question, 10 to 15 pages or 12 pages by next week. AI. Chat GPT. That's the best way, really. Can I tell you a story about pride? My brother has a son, his name is Surush, and the name itself is quite significant. If I was to give you the meaning of the name in a metaphoric way, imagine you're Anaz and you're a Muslim and you're like 20 with a beard and you're asleep. And just before sunrise, you hear something. And because you're a Muslim or you happen to be religious, you believe in certain fantastic, things out there. And so there is this angel saying things to you. That's what the name means, Surush. That a voice is being given to you or a message is given to you. Anyways, so he must have been maybe 3 or 4. We were playing ping pong in the garage or table tennis, and then Surush begins to burp. And I, being the stupid man that I am, have always been and will never change. I asked him nicely, don't burp, it's not a good thing to do. Then he does it again. Don't burp, it's not a good thing to do. And then as he continues to burp, my voice, the volume goes higher and higher to the point, then I yell at him. His father, my brother, was there. And then once I yelled, he went to his father's arm and began to cry. And then my brother, his father, took him inside, and my father looks at me and says, you know why he was burping, right? I said, yeah, it's just a bad thing to do. He says it's for the first time he knows how to control the flow of the air and make some sounds. Don't you know that? I said, no, I had no idea. He was very proud of being able to burp, but I saw his burping as misbehaving, being rude in the presence of me, his father, his grandfather, my father. Pride in some ways can be a really, really good thing, especially if you're slowly beginning to accomplish things you couldn't do before. Hello? If you've been on drugs and you've been sober for one day, that's a thing to be proud of. If at a certain point you are able to talk about your history as an addict, you've accomplished something. So pride in many ways, despite what the Catholic Church tries to sell us, which is one of the 7 deadly sins, and in some ways it could be true if pride happens to be related to certain parts of you that are infantile, not accomplished, not mature. I don't play the piano. I'm not very good. Imagine, people in this room are all pianists. And here I am sitting and boasting about how great of a pianist I am. And every time one of you raises their hand or his hand or her hand to say something about the piano, I overtake the conversation. Now, that's being proud as well. It's just a false narrative because I'm really not very good. When a child is born, and for those of us in this class who, especially mothers, they don't really care that they've been in your belly harassing you for like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months. At the moment they come out, they cry, they scream, they harass you. They want to be held, they want to be nursed. And it has to do with their self. Here I am, I need help. I don't care about your dilemma, help me. Nurse me, hold me. So, again, it has to do with yourself. The question is, what part of yourself? the more accomplished, the more right you have to be proud. But I think if you're accomplished in the right way and if you're mature in the right way, pride becomes, I think, refined by humility. That's all I can say, really. You know, and I think these are stages that people go through. You know, you begin to learn how to sing, and every time you go to a gathering, you just dominate the space. There comes a point where you know you're a good singer. You've also sang enough. You also know that there are other people in the room who want to kind of just sing. So you kind of take the back seat. You become more invisible. You're still good. If they ask you, you'll sing. You know, you'll probably be better than the rest of the people in the room. But nevertheless, you'll take the back seat. You know. So yeah.
You're saying it's not always misplaced, the pride.
No,
There is room for it to be, regardless of, I guess, one's level of maturity or the like.
You know, yesterday I poured a lot of concrete.
You?
Yeah.
To what?
Concrete?
You poured concrete?
Yeah. I spent about maybe 7 hours in the backyard. So I'm pretty tired today. And that's why my brain is not working well. My language is all jumbled up. My thinking is not very clear. If this was a scenario some 20 years ago, I'd be very embarrassed. Because I'm an instructor, I'm supposed to like entertain you guys in a fun way for about an hour and 15 minutes. You know, my stage in life is now different. I can be somewhat transparent and say, listen, I'm a little tired today. And I can be actually quite proud of being bold enough to be honest about that. Just in case the class is dragging a little bit today, it's because of A, B, C, D. You know, and should any of you in this class want to pass a judgment, this guy's a crummy instructor. He knows that he needs to be in class on Monday. He should be energetic. How dare he goes to the backyard and pours concrete, you know. And the truth is, it's okay for me. You know, so it kind of shows its face in different ways at different stages. So,
But we should embrace it.
I don't know what you should do. You should just do the best you can. Does that? Yeah. Anyone else? I'm sorry? Of course. Go ahead, Abby.
The humility that shapes.
I don't know. I'm sorry, what the question? You know, when you get older, you just forget. Good morning. Good morning. Can I give you a poem? Probably shared this before, but چون دایره ما ز پوست پوشان توییم، در دایره حلقه به گوشان توییم. گر بنوازی ز جان خروشان توییم، ور ننوازی هم از خموشان توییم. Imagine you just bought this grand Yamaha piano and it's about $30,000. It's beautiful and it sounds great. It's a piano that Beethoven would play on. It's been made really, really well with proficient hands, but it sits there and it doesn't make a sound. It waits and waits and waits and waits for a very proficient, talented, creative, inspired, maybe happy or profoundly sorrowful pianist to sit on the chair and play it. Only then it'll begin to roar. I think what you have in regards to pride and humility, it takes, I think, a human being a long, long time to become proud of the right things, to be able to think well, to have gone through a lot of mistakes in life, to have sinned greatly, profoundly, miserably, to have learned the lessons from those mistakes, to be able to kind of feel deeply about things and then articulate them in language and then talk about them to other people. And then after a while you realize you've talked enough, then you assume silence. You just become very, very quiet. Even though you have all this wisdom inside you, you just remain very quiet. Because at this stage in your life, you wait for the right people, the right student, the right ears, the right question. Someone who can kind of process the answer, the response well. And so what you have is, first you have a human being who kind of just is born in the dark and assumes wrongly, of course, arrogantly, boastfully, pridefully, that they know how to kind of manage life. But time passes, they're 30 now, 40 now, they sit and they realize they've made a lot of mistakes. It's a very tormenting place to be, and they get maybe depressed, maybe even chronically for some time. And kind of like Robert Downey Jr., they get themselves out of that pit after going through maybe lots of therapy sessions, reading lots of books, maybe writing a lot of things, living in the cave and just processing ideas. And then you learn how to speak. And when you speak, your language is seasoned with a good amount of experience: frustration, anger, sorrow, dread, sin, understanding the sin or mistakes. And so the audience, those who are listening to you, can feel all of that. They may not be able to articulate it, but they feel it. And so they gravitate towards you because they want to hear more. And that creates a different sort of pride inside you. You like the attention, you like the audience, because your value goes up as a human being. And then there needs to come a time where you're just, to some extent, okay with just being left alone. And so you wait, and you wait, like a drum. Even though I can make all these wonderful sounds that will inspire people, I'm just going to sit quietly. If there is a worthy percussionist who will pick me up and just slap the hell out of me, I will dance, I will sing, I will make lots of wonderful noises. If, on the other hand, there is no one worthy to pick me up and slap me, I'll remain quiet. And like anything else, you could be proud for things you have not really accomplished, but assume that you have. You could be proud of the things you have accomplished because it took a lot of work and effort, And then there comes a point where you no longer really need to put yourself out there for all to see. You kind of just hide in the background for someone to find you. which is a bit more difficult these days because all of us are impoverished. We're so poor in so many different ways that we just need to kind of be seen all the time. So, if your question is, well, how does one assume the right kind of pride? I wouldn't know. How does one slowly grow into humility? I wouldn't know. I don't think there's a how-to. Some people get there and some people don't, even though they desire to get there. Yeah, Grace.
Can you talk a little bit about
Regret?
how to live with it and process it?
Sibley was asking me if I am doing the exercises after my open heart surgery. I was really good for the first month and a half. All I ate was grass, vegetables, and I walked every day. And it's because I lost something. And the thing I had, I didn't know the value of. And that's usually how life is. In I think, richness, when you have something, in health, in privilege. One of the problems with privilege is that it causes forgetfulness. I mean, you could be in a state of privilege while being forgetful. I mean, that in itself is good. But for the most part, because you have the privilege of forgetting and not remembering, you kind of waste things. There comes a point where you had all this money, let's just say, but you spend it on foolish things. And now it comes time where you kind of matured a little and you say, I want to go back to school. But, school is expensive. And I'm not talking about Laney. Let's just say you want to go to San Francisco. And let's say you want to do your bachelor's, do your master's. I mean, that's like a $40,000 ordeal. And you had just spent, like $35,000, $40,000, $50,000 on just video games, or technology. And now you have to take out loans. It's going to be about like 18%. And you're a bit more mature now. You think well about money now. You think well about school. You think well about yourself and your future. And you, once in a while, sit back and you say, I had $50,000. My mom died and she gave me all this money. How could I have been so stupid? So regret is a place of poverty. You had something. You didn't know the value of what you had. You have it no more. And for some strange reason, the universe has this tendency of balancing the scale. What you had but did not know the value, you are now forced to know the value of it. Now that causes regret. But you just don't have regret by itself. You have anger. You punish yourself inwardly. You punish also your parents for not teaching you the proper lessons about money, about your future, about youth, about time, about how things pass by so quickly. That maybe they should have slapped you, spanked you, belted you, instead of just saying, oh, honey, you're an American, democracy, you're free, do whatever the hell you want to do. And so a lot of the blame stuff goes around. And whenever you have become regretful, I think in a very, very strange way, you become religious. Because you attain a good amount of humility. You self-punish. If Christians grab a rope or a chain and bang it on their back, you do it too in your own unique way, And you self-punish. I mean, you don't need God to come down and pass a judgment on you. You do it on yourself really, really well. Now, regret also creates a good amount of pain. So regret is about loss. Loss creates grief, sadness, anger. We try to find a way to overcome it, to fix it. Some are successful, some are not. There was a show on NPR. I was coming to campus around like 4 a.m. It was about this young man who had to drive his father to work every single day from, somewhere to somewhere. And his father was getting up in age, and he was telling his son the same stories over and over and over again, every single day. And once in a while, the son would get really, really upset. In fact, scream at his father. Then his father had a heart attack and died on the spot. And he was sharing his story that how much he misses his father and how often he regrets those mornings where he didn't pay attention to the stories, he didn't appreciate his father. And it's just one of those things that all of us eventually have to kind of face. You know, I mean, most of you are 18, 19. You know you want to get yourself to a good school because it'll open a lot of doors for you. And though you may have that desire intellectually, you may not be that ready or responsible. So you'll get yourself to East Bay. It's a good school, or San Francisco, equally a good school. And then you want to look for a job. But you realize you're competing with people who went to Stanford, who went to NYU, who went to Brown. And then you say, you know, I had the opportunity to go to those schools. I didn't. Why? You know, and it's something that lives in time. You know, right now you think you're okay in this class. Next week is our last week together. And then it'll dawn upon you that the grades will be issued soon. And then even though you've never emailed me, you've never come to my office, you've never thought about the class, all of a sudden I get like 50 emails from you. Amir, you know, I'm really, really sorry. My dog died, then my cat died, and then my dad died, and I died. You know, is there any way I can pass the class at least with a C? You know. Well, why is it that you've been thinking about all of this the entire 16 weeks? It's just one of those human things. There isn't much you can do.